Hello everyone, welcome to today's current affairs session of Civilspedia. The topics we are going to see is Convention on Biodiversity, Fiscal Consolidation, Transformative Constitutionalism, and with respect to editorial topic is National Manufacturing Policy. The first one, the Convention on Biodiversity. So this convention is a legally binding international treaty that is focusing main on three major goals. First one is it is conserving the biodiversity. And second one, how to sustainably use this biodiversity. And third one, it is fair and equitable sharing of the benefits that is arising from the utilization of this biodiversity genetic resources. These are the three major goals of this Convention on Biodiversity. The recent issue of the recent consent with respect to this Convention on Biodiversity is recently India has submitted its 6th national report on this Convention on Biodiversity. So this Biodiversity Convention has been started from Rio Earth Summit in 1992 and it came into force in 1993. India is concerned party of this Convention on Biodiversity. And this, with respect to this 6th national report on Convention on Biodiversity, this Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change has submitted it, and it's reviewed that how the progress has been taken with respect to this achievement in this national biodiversity targets. So India is first among the 5 top countries in the world, and it is the first in the Asia, as well as it is the first biodiversity rich country to submit this national report on this Convention on Biodiversity. And this report has tracked the progress, how much that India has achieved with respect to this 12 national biodiversity targets, that is equivalent to this 20 global Aichi targets. So it shows that how much level India is performing with respect to this national biodiversity targets. With that thing, among these 12 targets, 2 targets India has overachieved, like forest cover increase. Then with respect to this 8th target, it has been in the on track. And with respect to the 2 remaining target, it is going to be meet the target by 2020. And with respect to this global biodiversity convention, in global scenario, it was very negative with respect to many other countries. While with respect to India, it is on the positive side. Because for example, the recent survey has showed that India's forest cover has been on the positive side. It is on the rise. And with respect to another thing is India's 20% of geographical areas comes under the conservation of biodiversity. While this Aichi target of 11th target of Aichi shows that we need to have minimum of 17% of total geographical area to coming under the conservation of biodiversity. We have overachieved this target of 20% of geographical area of India comes under the conservation of biodiversity. And with respect to another achievement, overachievement of India is this achieving this access and benefit sharing as per this Nagoya Protocol. Because this Convention of Biodiversity has 2 supplementary agreements. One is Cartagena Protocol and another one is Nagoya Protocol. This Cartagena Protocol is with respect to this living modified organisms handling, while this Nagoya Protocol will have the target of how this benefits of sharing can be equitably accessible to all the peoples from rising from this genetic resources. So India has achieved overwhelming with respect to this Nagoya Protocol. With that thing, we will end this topic and we will go on to the next topic of fiscal consolidation. Fiscal consolidation is nothing but it is how a physical health of a country is going on, so that the revenue will be increased as well as this unwanted expenditure will be curtailed down, so that the fiscal health of the government will be at a optimal level. That is called this fiscal consolidation. So what will happen if we have a good fiscal consolidation? That is, if our country's fiscal health is very good, then what will be the impact? The first impact is it will reduce the government's burden on the interest payment, because if the fiscal consolidation is properly, then the expenditure, unwanted expenditure will be, unproductive expenditure will be reduced down, so that the negative of that is this interest payment burden will be reduced on this government. And second thing is it will going to have a negative effect on this inflation, so that the inflation will be curtailed. So it will give a positive growth to this economic growth of the country. And third thing, with respect to if we follow this fiscal consolidation properly, then our interest rate in the overall economy will be come down. Then it will give to more credit to the country and it will favor this economic growth in the country. So with respect to the fiscal consolidation, India has this Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act of 2003. That shows that the revenue deficit, we have to eliminate the revenue deficit. That is, this revenue deficit has to be completely removed. And with respect to this fiscal deficit, it has to be a target of 3% of total GDP. That is how much India is producing gross domestic product within a year. That amount 3% only has to be come under this fiscal deficit. So that is the target that has been laid down by this Fiscal FRBM Act of 2003. And what is the recent scenario that is happening with respect to this India's fiscal policy is India's growth inducing capital is not properly. That is, India's growth inducing capital expenditure is very low. That shows we are not, our expenditure doesn't show that we are not properly spending on the productive assets, that is productive capital spending. So that is the one negative thing that India is facing with respect to this fiscal consolidation. So among this overall expenditure growth, that is very much less of 9.1%, while we have projected as a 10.1% of expenditure growth. Among this expenditure growth reduction, the major reduction was seen in this capital spending of this capital goods. So that this productive asset creation spending is very low with respect to this India. This is one of the negative thing of this India. And second important thing, that is one positive favor, is there was increase in this non-tax revenue. And third important thing is we are going to place this 7 PSUs for this part of this disinvestment. That makes we will going to get amount through this disinvestment that is going to handle this fiscal deficit. But if we continue having this eroding this capital assets of the country, then it will going to have a fiscal slippage in the continuous years also. So we need to have an optimal level of a disinvestment as well as this tax revenue increasement, and how to have a more and productive capital spending. So what are the measures we have to take to control this fiscal consolidation? The first thing is we have to increase this tax revenue, because this fiscal consolidation is nothing but how we are handling this revenue as well as this expenditure. So how to increase the revenue and how to reduce this unwanted, unproductive expenditure. The first thing with respect to this revenue is how to increase this revenue, tax revenue. Because by increasing the tax base and by increasing the efficiency of the tax administration, we can increase the tax revenue. As well as we have to enhance this tax to GDP ratio, because it is one of the very low among the countries, major growing economy. India having a very less amount of a tax to GDP ratio. So our GDP is growing, but with respect to that, the tax is not growing at that level. So we need to focus on tax to GDP ratio at the optimal level. And third important thing is we need to focus on this expenditure side, because having a better targeting, rationalizing the subsidies, and having a much of a direct benefit transfer, we can reduce this unproductive expenditure. So by having these three measures, we can contain this fiscal consolidation. So what are the things past we have done with respect to this fiscal consolidation is, we have set up 2 committees to understand this, to study this India's fiscal consolidation roadmap. The first one is in the Vijay Kelkar committee that has set the target of FRBM Act, this Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. That shows that revenue deficit has to be eliminated and fiscal deficit has to be 3% of the GDP. That is this Vijay Kelkar committee's recommendations. While the recent recommendation in 2016 that we have set up a committee under N.K. Singh for studying this, how this FRBM Act is possible in the reality and what is the future fiscal roadmap that we have to follow. So as per this N.K. Singh committee, these are the major recommendation of this N.K. Singh committee. The first one is how to utilize this debt as a primary target to fiscal policies. Instead of just focusing on the deficit, we have to focus on this fiscal policy. So this committee has recommended to have at least a general of 60% of debt to GDP ratio for the overall country. And with respect to central government, it has to be 38.7% total debt to GDP ratio. And with respect to state government, that is debt to GSTP ratio will be 20% by 2023. So that we will have a comprehensive of a 60% of debt to GDP ratio. That is, out of how much amount of GDP we are producing, that much 60% will be India's debt level. That is the optimum, that is the maximum level we have to follow within this 2023. That is the first recommendation that has been understood by this N.K. Singh committee. The second thing is the fiscal deficit target they have set for 2.5% of a GDP, while Vijay Kelkar committee has set the target of 3% of GDP. They have reduced it, this N.K. Singh committee has reduced it to 2.5% of GDP. And with respect to revenue deficit, they have said that by 2023, we have to reduce this revenue deficit to 0.8% of GDP. And another thing, the recommendation that has been done by this N.K. Singh committee is, we need to set up an autonomous fiscal council that will study how this fiscal roadmap is going on in the reality with respect to the India. So that is the 3 major recommendation that has been done by this N.K. Singh committee. And third important topic is transformative constitutionalism. This transformative constitutionalism concept is nothing but how our constitution is transforming according to the dynamic needs of the society. Instead of going for this majoritarian view or in the traditional manner, how we are moving towards this modern egalitarian democracy. That is how we are adapting the nature of the people. So instead of going for this majoritarian view, how we are understanding this constitution and making stress to the constitution instead of going for this people's will. So for example, the recent changes has been done by this constitution in Supreme Court, how it is impacting this India. So for example, they have quoted this as South African constitution that has majorly recognized that history of discrimination has been taken while considering and framing a new laws. So that shows how the constitution is transforming as per the needs of the society. For example, there is a difference between constitution and constitutionalism. Constitution is nothing but it is a document that is giving rights to the people and the limited power to the government. While constitutionalism will say that it is the ideology by which how this government, the limited powers has been put on the government, and how this check and balance between the judiciary, government and the executive part is handling. That shows this constitutionalism. So how this check and balance has been properly implemented, how the constitution is adapting to the needs of the society, dynamic needs of the society, so that no part of the people will be left behind this constitution. Because even though it is very minor people, minority people, they are facing a problem, then constitution has to give the solution to the problem. The constitution should not go for this majoritarian view just for the sake of the majority people. It has to think about this smaller minority people also. That is this constitutionalism. So for the example, Indian examples of transformative constitutionalism is that shows that how our Indian constitution is going under the dynamic transformation to become a transformative constitutionalism. The first example is the Khadia case, in which the Supreme Court has said that marriage rights between the two consenting adults will be approved. So they give rights to these two concerned people. And with respect to Shakti Vahini case, that shows this struck down this social structure against this marital union through this Kap Panchayats. So even though this Kap Panchayat has been accepted by majority of people, the decision of the Kap Panchayats will not be accepted in the Supreme Court. So they have struck down this marital union against this Kap Panchayat in this Shakti Vahini case. And with respect to the recent case of this Navjit Singh Johar case, in which Supreme Court has decriminalized this homosexuality, that is, it has struck down this section 377, thereby giving the rights to LGBT group. So this minor group of people now only started to get the rights of this under this decriminalization of a section 377. So by this, how the society is transforming, how the constitution is transforming to meet the needs of even the minority people. And fourth case is with respect of India, how this transformation of constitutional has been happened is in the Aadhaar case. That is how the right to privacy has been properly protected in this Aadhaar case. And with respect to the fifth Sabarimala, women entering the Sabarimala case, and in the Puttapasamy case, in which the sexual orientation has been given as a privacy for a person, and this privacy is fundamental right. Under this Puttapasamy case, the Supreme Court has given the verdict. That shows this recent verdicts of the Supreme Court. The 6 recent verdicts of the Supreme Court has shows that how our constitution has been transforming as per the needs of the people. So it will lead to modern egalitarian democracy rather than going for the traditional backup of this constitution. So it shows how Indian constitution is transforming and how it has become a living document so that it will adapt to the needs of the people. Then we will go on more to the next topic of national manufacturing policy. So recently we have set up national investment and manufacturing zone, 3 zones we have set up. With that thing we will see what is this policy and what are the target it has been set and what measures we have to take to implement this manufacturing policy properly. The first thing is this policy has been formulated by Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion that comes under Ministry of Industry and Commerce. And this policy has set the target of total manufacturing sector contribution to the GDP will be 25% by 2022. Currently, this contribution is only 16%. And with respect to comparing the China, it is 34%. That is, China's manufacturing sector is contributing 34% to their overall GDP, while India will have only 16%. And we have set the target of 25% by 2022. So why we have to focus for this manufacturing policies? Because this manufacturing policies is the manufacturing sector is a labor intensive one. And we India within the next decade, we are going to add upon 220 million people workforce will be added. So with that workforce, 220 million workforce, at least 50%, that is 110 million people has to be absorbed by this manufacturing sector. Then only we can handle this demographic dividend. Otherwise, it will going to give a negative disaster for this demographic dividend of the India. So how to create this 110 million job within this manufacturing sector is the next biggest hurdle within the India. So for that thing, we are framing this national policy, and how implementing this national policy is the vital thing, because within thing we have to create more and more jobs. And this national in the investment and manufacturing zone, that is NMIZ. It is nothing but it is an integrated township, industrial township will be created under this NMIZ. So it will be declared by the state government under the Article 243Q. While this NMIZ will be notified by the central government and it will be managed by the special purpose vehicle. So all the stakeholders of this NMIZ will be central government, state government as well as this SPV. So it is something different from this special economic zone, that is SEZ. This SEZ will be only focusing on this export, while this NMIZ will focus on this how to increase this manufacturing so that the employment generation will be more. So it will benefit the government people, Indian people. So this SEZ will focus just on the export, while this NMIZ will focus on exclusive in the manufacturing, whether it is the import for this domestic needs or for this export. This both will be handled under this NIMZ. So this NIMZ is very important, crucial to play a huge role to implement this national manufacturing policy. And what are the 6 areas that has been focused under this national manufacturing policy is, first one is this MSME, because this micro, small and medium enterprises is one of the labor intensive one. So by having more credit growth or more growth with respect to this MSME will benefit for the more and more employment generation, thereby absorb more workforce into this MSME sector. And second thing this manufacturing policy has focused is technology and innovation, because by having more and more technological innovation only we can make the people to work as a semi-skilled or more skilled people under this manufacturing policies, so that it will create a proper quality dignity job to the people. Instead of going for unskilled job, it will give a dignified job for the people. And third important thing is how we have to have this ease of doing business, because by simplifying the business regulations, by having this much of a ease of doing business only, more entrepreneurs will come that will going to create the more jobs for this new demographic dividend people. And fourth important task is how we are going to enhance this infrastructure. And biggest hurdle within India is to implement this manufacturing policies, how we will have this investment, especially this private investment into this manufacturing sector, and how we will going to merge that integrated India's trade with the global trade and thereby capture the global market. And fourth important thing is how to have this fiscal policies, because this national manufacturing policy is focusing on this fiscal policies. So by having more and more good health, that is government is going to have proper expenditure, productive expenditure, then it will having a good fiscal policy. And last important area, that is this national manufacturing policy is focusing on the skills and employability, because by enhancing or upgrading the skills or upskilling and reskilling the people only, it can meet the needs of the future people, thereby create the more jobs in the future. So what are the 3 indicators that has been understood under this national manufacturing policies? First one is this growth, the GDP growth, and second one is this credit, and third one is this investment. These are the 3 indicators that will tell how this manufacturing sector is growing within India, because this IIP, that is Index of Industrial Production, and the manufacturing GDP growth will tell us how this manufacturing sector is growing. And second thing is how this credit growth to this MSME or to this manufacturing sector is going. That will show how in future it will give the output. So this credit growth is one of the vital indicator of this national manufacturing policies, how it is implementing. And last important thing is this investment growth. So by having the proper productive investment only, this manufacturing sector will going to fetch more jobs. Because if we're going to invest 1 rupee in this tertiary sector, it will not create much jobs. While this employment elasticity of this industrial, that is this manufacturing sector, is much high. So by having more investment in the manufacturing sector, we will going to generate more jobs. Instead of focusing on this tertiary sector, if we started to focus on the secondary sector of manufacturing field, then it is definitely going to build more and more jobs. That by we will have more and more capital goods production by India itself. That will reduce this import of a capital goods, and thereby it will reduce the fiscal deficit. And we will going to have this much higher level of fiscal capital to GDP ratio. Because if the investment level is grown, then only this fiscal capital to GDP ratio will grow. Then only it will give a productive assets, thereby having this India's fiscal policy will be at the good level. So with that thing, the next important thing we have to focus on this manufacturing sector is how to increase this productivity, because the major drawback of India is this productivity level of this manufacturing sector. So this organized sector of within India, organized manufacturing sector within India have an average growth of 1.8%, which is very much low when compared to all other major emerging countries. So we need to increase this productivity. How to increase this productivity? We have to focus on the technology innovation as well as the skilling and upskilling these people. So by having more skilled employees, we will increase this productivity level. And apart from that, how to have the balance between trade union as well as this management. That is an important thing in the manufacturing sector, because that is one of the hurdle that is manufacturing sector is facing. More and more trade unions started to hurdle this management, and management is not going to take care of this trade union. So there has to be a friendly nature between this trade union and the management. For that, government has to play as a proper facilitator and regulator role between these two parties. And apart from that, how India is aligning with this national manufacturing policy with Skill India, Make in India, Digital India, and this Industrial Revolution of 4.0. Because this Industrial Revolution of 4.0 is the next future job market. So how India is integrated into this Industrial 4.0 is much more important thing. So how we are aligning all these things into this Industrial Revolution is one of the vital thing that India has to done. And apart from that, India has set up a task force on the artificial intelligence to integrate India's economic transformation. So these are the things we have to focus on this manufacturing policies to integrate, to get the target of 25% of contribution of manufacturing sector to the GDP. So that we will end today's current affairs session with that. Thank you.